I thought they gutted Varus. What's he doing all the way up here? What's up, Summoners? Welcome back to another ProGuides High Elo tier list. My name is Irene, and in this video, I'm going to run you guys through 5 tier lists designated at High Elo and Elite levels of play. These tier lists are specifically geared towards the Platinum Plus bunch, but we're always happy to provide content for all of you. We're inclusive here in our community. I'm already expecting those spicy memes in the comments from you guys. No shame if you're not High Elo, I'm a believer and I know you'll make your climb up there someday. By the way, I want to let you guys know that we're doing a giveaway for 7 annual ProGuides subscriptions and a ton of points. To have a chance at winning this prize, all you need to do is subscribe to our YouTube channel and head over to our giveaway section in our Discord. It just takes a few clicks and you are absolutely all set. Finally, for our question of the day, what champions have you gotten pentakills on? If you haven't, which champions were you close with? I've gotten my fair share of Katarina and Master Yi pentakills on ARAM, but one of the first ones I ever got was on Kog'Maw. It was pretty exciting, and clearly it's not a memory that I've forgotten. Let me know your answers in the comments below. Next, let's get started with the video. Beginning with the top lane, let's quickly cover some balance changes. Once again, I'd like to remind you guys that we have had our patch rundown video that covers all the changes for patch 10.13 in depth. We're going to cover most of the changes here while only briefly mentioning other ones. Our first champion change is Ornn. He's been way too strong in competitive play. He's a reliable blind pick who's been way too impactful in his games. Riot decided they want to take away some of that safety. Whenever he forges a health or mana item for himself in lane, he no longer gains the full value, but instead, his health or mana retains its current percentage while having its threshold increase. Once he returns to base, things come back to normal. Nevertheless, this should prevent Ornn players from acting upon one of the strongest gameplay patterns in the game, trading at a deficit and then purchasing an item to end up winning the trade. Ornn's laning is going to feel significantly weaker as a result of these changes, and thus we've moved him down to the B tier. In contrast, Gnar is moving up into the B tier. He's up for another round of buffs that should hopefully give him a decent chance to come out on top during the laning phase. While his win rate sat below 49% win rate on patch 10.12, these buffs look promising as they'll help Gnar out a ton in extended trades, especially during fights to the death. Gnar's E received a buff, having its attack speed bonus raised from 20 to 60% to now being 40 to 60%, and the attack speed bonus duration has been increased from 3 seconds to 4 seconds. These buffs can definitely be the deciding factor in specific matchups and should hopefully allow Gnar players to contend more lane matchups. Next up is Yorick. The leash range on the Maiden of the Mist was reduced from 900 to 600 range. This is more a quality of life buff, and it's expected that more high elo players than low elo players will benefit from it. All this does is it makes sure that Yorick has better control over the Maiden of the Mist. In other words, it'll follow him more closely and won't wander off and randomly die as often. In high elo, we don't think this buff will be enough to bump Yorick up a tier just yet, but he's still a niche pick that specific players find success on. With that said, the top lane is definitely going to stir up quite a bit in response to the Conqueror nerfs this patch. Our analysts don't think that there will be massive changes, as the relative power of each top laner should remain similar. The only adjustment they decided to make because of the Conqueror nerfs was that they moved Aatrox into the B tier. In terms of other shifts, Syndra and Camille have been added to the S tier. As of late, Camille has returned as a popular dominant pick in solo queue. High elo players are finding a ton of success on her as she's a champion with a ton of agency. She's got plenty of good mobility, incredible damage, and even has some lockdown as well. Syndra has also been silently creeping up and has emerged as a dominant high elo top lane champion as well. A big part of this is the fact that players don't see it coming. A lot of enemy mid laners lock in a champion to counter Syndra, only to realize that she's actually going top lane. Thus, they end up getting counterpicked themselves. Our S plus tier consists of Darius, Wukong, and Fiora, while our S tier in the top lane consists of Kled, Shen, Jax, Renekton, Singed, Garen, Maokai, Syndra, and Camille. We've also moved Tryndamere down to the A tier as he isn't performing at the level he was expected to following the Zeal buff on patch 10.11. Although Conqueror did receive a nerf, most of the champions listed here that use it don't really struggle all that much to rack up those stacks. Darius is definitely on the slower side, but his 50% ban rate last patch implies that a small nerf like this won't knock him out of the S plus tier just yet. Players hate him because even if he isn't OP, he at least feels like he is. For solo queue in particular, he definitely is OP because of how dominant his laning phase is and because he thrives in disorganized play. With Ornn getting hit once again, Maokai continues to assert his dominance as the strongest tank top laner at the moment. He's a flexible pick that's relatively safe as well as reliable, and that's what we want from our tanks: low economy and high agency. With that said, let's head into the jungle next. First up, let's talk about Nocturne. he hasn't been performing that well in the jungle. Playing versus him can be quite a struggle when he turns off the lights and manages to one-shot you or a teammate. However, his low win rates in high elo indicate that he's just not that strong. Nocturne ended last patch below a 47% win rate. He definitely needed a little bit of love, but Riot had to approach him in a way that wouldn't help him out in the mid lane, where ironically, he actually is finding success. Nocturne's passive now provides double reduction when he hits monsters, just like it does when he attacks champions. For now, Nocturne will remain in the B tier, but our analysts will be sure to continue analyzing his statistics in high elo. Vi also received a buff this patch. Vi's Q cooldown has been reduced from 12 to 8 seconds to now being 12 to 6 seconds. With 40% cooldown reduction, Vi is actually going to have a lot more mobility than before, and the extremely short cooldown on her Q is definitely going to allow her to impact games much more heavily. Our analysts have actually moved Vi up into the B tier as this buff looks rather promising. Nunu also received a buff, but this one is a little bit targeted at AP off builds. Nunu's Q damage ratio has been increased from 0.5 to 0.65, while his healing ratio on it has gone up from 0.7 to 0.9. Finally, his ultimate's shield now includes an AP ratio of 1.5 as well. Even for Nunu players who aren't going full AP, these buffs are still pretty sizable. Building an item like Liandry's Torment or running runes like Gathering Storm or Eyeball Collection can provide some ability power and make Nunu feel tankier as a result. Our analysts think that Nunu is already sitting in a comfortable spot in the A tier, and that's where he'll remain for now. He's definitely earned his spot there, and while these buffs are nice, for most high elo players, they aren't going to have much effect at all. Now with that said, let's talk about shifts on the tier list. First up, let's talk about the S tier. Evelynn has earned a spot in the S tier. With Conqueror receiving a nerf, champions that don't rely on that keystone are now a bit stronger in comparison. Evelynn has put on a stellar performance in the last couple of patches. In fact, her win rate in Challenger was actually 55% at the end of last patch. While there wasn't a very big sample size of games to look at, it's still impressive to see how much potential she has up there. If we're looking a bit lower, around Platinum, she's still performing rather well. Her win rate was only a little bit over 50%, but her ban rate ended at a very high 15.4% last patch. A lot of players struggle playing against Evelynn because of her stealth and burst damage. As a result, she's an excellent solo queue carry, and our analysts heavily suggest players pick her up. In contrast, Graves was moved from the S+ tier down to the S tier. This is due to the fact that Death's Dance received a rather hefty nerf this patch. The item nerf isn't enough to significantly weaken Graves, but it'll bring him down to earth a little. Instead of being a super OP pick, he's headed into pretty OP pick territory. On a similar note, Kindred has unfortunately dropped into the B tier as well. Conqueror was nerfed especially hard for ranged champions. The stat cap being increased to 12 hurts marksmen even more than bruisers, and Kindred is definitely going to feel weaker in response. With that said, our S+ tier in the jungle consists of Rek'Sai, Elise, Wukong, Fiddlesticks, Olaf, while the S tier consists of Lee Sin, Kha'Zix, Rengar, Zac, Nidalee, Kayn, Evelynn, and Graves. AP junglers like Elise and Fiddlesticks are looking especially promising this patch. Alongside Evelynn, I heavily recommend picking one of these AP junglers up, as they should have easier times competing with physical damage junglers now that Conqueror's gotten a nerf. Fights that were previously extremely close should now feel winnable, as maxing Conqueror out a little bit later means that champions who use it also access the bonus sustain a bit later than before. Now let's move forward and run through the mid lane next. To kick off the mid lane, we've got yet another Cassiopeia nerf. This time, it's for real though. Her base MR has been reduced from 34 to 32, in response to the fact that her previous nerf actually increased her mid lane win rate because Riot overcompensated and gave her 4 more magic resist than before. That number is going down to 2 more than before, and Cassiopeia should feel just right now. In spite of this nerf, our analysts believe Cassiopeia will still remain an S tier pick because, well, she only lost 2 magic resistance. Base stat nerfs aren't something you should make light of, but considering how small this nerf is, we don't think her win rate is going to suffer significantly. On the other hand, Syndra's nerfs are a bit more serious. Syndra's Q mana cost has increased by 20 early on. Instead of costing 40 to 80 mana, it now costs 60 to 80 mana. 20 more mana cost on her bread and butter ability early spells trouble for Syndra players, even in high elo. What this means is that Syndra's wave clear will take a hit. It's going to cost more mana to push minion waves, especially without blue buff. Missing Qs during trades or when trying to poke down opponents is going to cost Syndra players much more. Thus, we've moved her down to the B tier. It wasn't too long ago that Syndra was an OP safe pick. However, nerf after nerf have taken a toll on her ability to impact games. Syndra is not a bad pick just yet, but consecutive nerfs have definitely taken her out of the S tier in the mid lane. Now with the nerfs out of the way, it's time to talk about the buffs. Ryze has received yet another one. His magic resistance has gone up from 34 to 36, and his base attack damage has gone up from 56 to 58.7. Although buffs are nice, these ones aren't that big. The bonus 2 magic resistance should help Ryze out against AP champions, I get it. Getting enough gold for a tier on the first base is always something Ryze players strive to do. Having some more magic resistance early on should make it a little easier for Ryze players to farm up, and bonus AD should help with both last hitting and pushing waves in. These buffs should affect high elo more than low elo, but our analysts still believe Ryze will stay in the B tier for now. They'll keep a close eye on him, however, and our analysts will keep you guys updated on how he's doing next week in our mid-patch update. Kog'Maw is the final champion in the mid lane receiving a buff. The buff he received this patch was another balance change aimed at a non-meta pick. AP Kog'Maw hasn't been seen in quite a while, but maybe this buff will revive him. As AP Kog'Maw isn't seen very often, we'll consider it a newer pick for now and hold off on ranking him. Our analysts will definitely let you guys know how Kog'Maw is doing though in that mid-patch update we just mentioned. Make sure to subscribe so that you guys receive a notification for when we upload that. Anyway, let's talk about those numbers. The buff is that his Q's AP ratio has been increased from 0.5 to 0.7, while his R's has gone from 0.25 to 0.35 AP. Xerath fills a similar niche, and he's currently not doing so hot in the mid lane. It all comes down to just how strong AP Kog'Maw really is. These buffs don't look that big, but considering the rather low AP ratio on his E, it's hard to imagine Kog'Maw being significantly stronger than Xerath. In terms of other changes, we've moved Annie up into the A tier. Annie's win rates have been absolutely superb. In Platinum and higher last patch, she ended with a 52.8% win rate, while in Diamond and higher, that number actually shot up to 53.5%. These numbers actually scream that she's OP. She deals insane damage, brings crowd control, and leaves very little room for counterplay. However, the reason that we've held off on bumping Annie up to the S tier is the fact that there is indeed some counterplay to her, at least during the laning phase. Picking champions that outrange her or camping her hard with jungle pressure can easily shut Annie down. Annie's range is a bit shorter than a lot of mid laners, so it's absolutely possible to slowly poke her down. While she's behind, Annie can feel a bit underwhelming. If she's not able to one-shot her opponents, she definitely feels a lot less menacing. Our S+ tier in the mid lane consists of Zoe, Galio, and Twisted Fate. The S tier consists of Talon, Diana, Vladimir, Fizz, Katarina, and Cassiopeia. If those Conqueror nerfs hadn't come this patch, Talon would have almost certainly made it into our S+ tier. However, his insanely high win rate last patch was partially a direct result of players abusing Conqueror on him. Thus, he was also one of the reasons that the Keystone needed to be nerfed in the first place. Talon is still an S tier pick nonetheless. All the champions in our S+ and S tier are performing excellently in solo queue. For most of these champions, it's because of the insane amount of burst damage that they have. Bursting down an opponent from full health leaves very little time for them to respond. Without an enchanter support to keep them alive, most carries are always in one-shot range of champions like Talon, Zoe, Diana, Vladimir, Fizz, and Katarina. That covers the mid lane, so let's head on over to the bot lane next. Starting off the balance changes, we've got to talk about the Aphelios nerfs. Aphelios' base attack damage growth has been decreased from 2.2 to 2, and its ultimate's follow-up attack crit ratio has gone down from 50% to 20%. This is actually a pretty big nerf to Aphelios' ultimate. I'm sure we've all witnessed Aphelios wipe out an entire team with his ultimate at least once. If it wasn't us receiving it directly, it was through a Reddit clip or a montage of Riot's balancing blunders. Our analysts previously rated Aphelios a bit too low and put him in the B tier, but in response to the nerfs he's receiving, it seems like an appropriate tier for him to be in at the moment. Thus, he's staying there for now. Another bot laner who received a nerf was Kalista. Her attack damage growth was decreased from 4 to 3.5. When games stall out, Kalista players are now punished much harder with an intensified damage falloff. 9 less AD at level 18 is actually a pretty sizable amount. That's almost a whole longsword's worth of damage. On the bright side, games aren't supposed to go that long when you pick Kalista. You want to use her high early game damage output, as well as her utility to win key fights early on and snowball small leads into quick victories. Kalista was on the cusp of the A and B tier, but this nerf should push her toward the B tier. Finally, Lucian was actually buffed this patch. A nice change of pace from all the nerfs that we've been seeing in the bottom lane. His Q's laser range was increased from 900 to 1000. Lucian has actually been underperforming as a bottom laner, and Riot is taking the necessary steps to give him a fighting chance. In most cases, he's not actually able to pick up leads because he's outranged and outgunned by most bot laners. By buffing his Q's laser range, Lucian should have a better shot at poking enemies down and asserting his presence as a lane bully. He's going to stay in the B tier for now, but Lucian players in high elo will especially love this buff. Players who are good at lining up Q's through minions now have some more range to work with, and veteran marksman players will definitely start playing more Lucian. Our bot lane S+ tier consists of Ezreal and Kai'Sa this patch, while the S tier consists of Senna, Cassiopeia, Heimerdinger, Draven, and Vayne. Yes, you heard me right. Vayne is now an S tier pick, even in high elo. She's been performing extremely well, and this is for a variety of reasons. One of them is the fact that she does well into the two most contested picks right now, Ezreal and Kai'Sa. The other is the fact that bot lane bullies have been receiving nerfs left and right. Champions like Varus in the previous patch and Kalista in this one have been getting weaker and weaker. With weaker lane bullies, scaling champions are in a much better spot in the bottom lane than they were before. For the other changes, we've moved Varus to the A tier as well as Misfortune. Both of these champions have been performing worse than before in response to the nerfs that they received. There's no surprise there, they got nerfed, so of course they're gonna do worse. Although Varus' win rate fell below 50% in Platinum and higher last patch, he actually retained a 51% win rate as well as 44% ban rate in Challenger. He may still be OP in elite levels of play, but for most high elo players, he falls a bit short of the S tier. And here we had thought they had gutted Varus. A lot of people would disagree, and it's clear that he's still performing pretty decently. That's it for the bottom lane, so let's conclude with supports. We've got two balance changes for supports to cover, starting with Yuumi. Yuumi's E mana cost has taken a massive hit. Rather than costing 100 to 160 mana, it now costs 40 to 60 mana, plus 15% of Yuumi's maximum mana. Yuumi's E is an incredibly powerful ability. Aside from healing her ally, she also provides them bonus attack speed and movement speed. No matter what champion she heals, it's a massive help. Juggernauts and Assassins benefit heavily from the movement speed, while Marksmen make full use of the brief attack speed buff they receive from it. Overall, this ability is an extremely powerful one, and the fact that Yuumi players have been able to use it so liberally made her quite OP. This nerf puts a decent limit on the number of times Yuumi can cast her heal throughout a team fight. Unless she assists in a takedown while running the Presence of Mind rune, she's bound to run out of mana quite quickly. Yuumi concluded patch 10.12 with a 65% ban rate in Platinum and higher, which should signal something. In Diamond and higher, that number was even higher, at 68%. In high elo, Yuumi was the most banned champion by a landslide, while at all ranks, she was the second most banned champion, only falling behind Yasuo. This is a nerf that most of the community has wanted, and we finally got it. Our analysts have moved Yuumi down from the S tier to the A tier as a result. The final balance change we're covering is to Rakan. He received a minor buff this patch to his W, increasing its damage from 70 to 270 to 70 to 290. Guardian received nerfs this patch as well, reverting its shield value to 70 to 150. Once again, if you guys don't know about certain changes we've mentioned in this video, make sure to check out our initial patch rundown from earlier this week because we cover all of them in depth. Nevertheless, this buff feels more like a compensation buff for Rakan since he's one of the champions that relied heavily on the Keystone. Other notable champions who use this are Lulu and Bard, but they're still performing excellently at the moment. We're actually not moving Rakan up on the tier list in spite of this buff, because he'll likely stay around the same power level. Although he did get 20 more damage on his W, which is a nice buff, he's lost a ton of shielding on Guardian, which is not nice at all. He'll stay in the A tier for now. As a result of all this, we don't see many other shifts to our support tier list. Our S+ tier for this patch consists of Senna and Bard, while our S tier consists of Thresh, Leona, Blitzcrank, Janna, and Lulu. Bard has actually been absolutely nutty. He ended the last patch with a 53.2% win rate in Diamond and higher. With Guardian receiving a nerf, however, we also expect Bard's performance to dip slightly. Even with a small decrease, he's got a nice little buffer to work with, and even if his win rate drops a whole percentage, he's still going to come off as OP. Lulu has been on the rise as well, and with Yuumi receiving nerfs this patch, she'll continue to gain more and more hype. Her ban rate has climbed to 16% in Platinum and higher, and her win rate has been rather promising at 51.8% as of last patch. She's a versatile enchanter that provides crowd control, peel, as well as some decent buffs to her teammates. It sounds pretty familiar, right? And this Yuumi nerf may have paved the way for another oppressive support to take the spotlight. We'll have to see, however, since the Guardian nerfs also affect Lulu pretty heavily. That concludes our 10.13 high elo tier list. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, comment, and also subscribe so that you can stay updated with all the different kinds of content we're releasing. Also, like I mentioned earlier, check out ProGuides.com if you're serious about climbing this season. Until next time, best of luck on the rift, guys.